Good morning, karibu sana. This is the morning cafe. Nakwambia hakuna furaha kama hii. Leo maniu wanaitwa hapa kuna headline inasema mnyonge mnyongeni. Leo kuna kunyongwa. Nani ananyongwa leo?
Hayuko. Hayuko atu.
I wish angekuja ule jamaa wa mapenzi.
Leo sasa ni yeye hangepumua. Now that we don't pumua every day kama Arsenal. Lakini today is World Meditation Day. Meditate kule ambapo uko. Lakini sio na ile kitu ambayo wanafanya alafu you know whatever I'm talking about. World Meditation Day, take time to meditate on your life ama whichever thing you want to meditate about. This is Morning Cafe. My name is Ann Odida. Karibu sana.
My name is Fred Ndimulia. Quick look at the headlines. Natembeya akaziwa ndio habari kuu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. And I like the fact that the governor hapa anakani kama anasema bring it on.
Simba.
Kutane pale. Taifa Leo.
People Daily experts want budget to lock out 1 million learners.
All right, that's the People Daily. On the Standard, Ruto's seal grab. And this is a very interesting story. We'll tell you more about it.
Daily Nation, a very, very busy newspaper this morning. Nurses, no one wants. Wako hapo.
I think they should borrow a leaf from their Ugandan counterparts and clean up the front page, to be honest.
Yes.
This is a bit too much.
Very busy.
Yeah. On the Star, IEBC vetting order could trigger crisis. Now this is another, na hii kitu nimeimba mara mingi, nimeimba nikakaa kama mimi ndio ni kama mimi sielewi Kenya inaendelea. Sawa imekuja sasa. That's the Star.
Business Daily, Equity sacks workers over suspect accounts and M-Pesa.
All right. For State of the Nation, Senators Joe Nyoto and Eddie Oketch from Moranga and Migori counties respectively, as well as Nabi Nabwera MP Lugari constituency will be in studio today. Starting at 6:30, to stand by for that conversation. Tuvuke boda, hayawi mwisho ya kawa. Daily Monitor, goodbye rule of law till we meet again. That's soma hiyo tena. Goodbye rule of law till we meet again. Easy pass. NRM MPs yesterday passed the bill seeking to return civilians to be tried in the army courts, but failed to clear up fuzzy clauses on what defines exceptional circumstances for their trial and what should be considered a military attire, as opposition members walked out in protest. Pages 4, 5, 6 and 8 of this paper dedicated to this story. Musema, sahi mutafanya vile munataka. As MPs of NRM. Museme civilians should be tried. Hiyo itakuja kukukula wewe.
Yes.
Wewe ndio utakuwa tried kwa hiyo court martial.
Kenya kwanza wa huko.
Alafu the other thing ni military attire. You know Bobby Wine anaitwa Chagulani ama nani? Wanavaa ile kofia red. Waliambiwa that's military attire.
So wanafaa watoe.
Ndio sasa wamesema waambiwa watoe. Lakini trying civilians in a military court, hawa MPs ndio watakuwa tried up. I tell you. It will always bite you. Come back to bite you. That's the main story on the front page of the Daily Monitor. Other quick highlights, Frail Eddie Mutwe, that's Bobby Wine's bodyguard who had disappeared, sent to Luzira prison. Retirement benefit schemes record an upward growth, and the race for Kamwenge boils down to services. That's the Daily Monitor in Uganda today.
Tukisalia kule Uganda, as always.
Picha ya Museveni akisalamia ng'ombe iko hapo. Lazima tu kuwe na picha ya Museveni. Na anapenda mambo ya agriculture, akikata kitunguu, ndizi, salamia ng'ombe. Hiyo lazima ikuwe tu kwa front page ya gazeti.
Anywho, how UPDF bill was passed, opposition legislators storm out of parliament. That story on civilians to be tried in military courts. Of course, PDM central to NRM's wealth creation strategy. Museveni yuko hapo chini na bibi yake.
Alienda kuona ng'ombe. Yeah.
Wealth necessary for gospel pastor patients, a special feature there. And succession, tough fines for estate administrators. Kule chini, Kagezi killer reveals person who brokered deal. Kagezi ni yule former DPP wa Uganda kule. And exports to China increased by 190%. That's
very positive.
The new vision, yes.
190% exports. Meanwhile in Kenya zimeenda chini sababu tulifunga ile nini ya titanium. All right. Tuvuke boda tuingie Bongo na there's a Kenyan there featuring on the front page. Sababu Martha Karua wenzake kupigwa stop. Sasa hapo wamecheza kama wao wakaweka an English word kwa headline. Wenzake wamepigwa stop. Martha Karua kwa pale. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa pili wa gazeti hili la Mwananchi. Lakini habari kuu pale, bunge la tulizwa kuingilia JWTZ. Hii ni Jeshi la Wananchi wa Tanzania. Ni kuhusu sharti la vijana kupita JKT kuandikishwa kazi jeshini. So bunge la tulizwa kuingilia masuala ya jeshi, wanaambiwa military go slow. Hiyo sio yenu. Mawimbi kukomaza kuimaliza Chadema. Chadema by the way wako na shida mingi sana. It's only months to election, their main leader is in prison. Wako na cracks kule, kuna ile G55, kuna ile Chauma. Sioni wakishinda hiyo election. Kusema tu kweli, poleni, lakini mumeweza. Hakuna sympathy hapo.
Okay.
Kikwete siri ya ushindi wa Janabi WHO. So it was Kikwete who actually intervened, probably, according to this paper. Kule juu Chauma yachochea mjadala wa kisiasa, na hii imeleta shida sana hata kwenye Chadema. Chauma. Gazeti la Mwananchi kule Tanzania.
Tukisalia kule The Citizen, Finnish president adds new global order with Africa as equal partner, and President of Finland Alexander Stubb spoke candidly about free trade and the shifting global order, emphasizing that the future of global growth lies on the African continent, a region that must be engaged not merely as a market but as a true partner. Alikuwa huku kwetu pia.
Hapa nasema, if the global economic order is changing, and I believe it is, then the most effective response is greater regional integration. Hapa tuko na EAC. Mnaona kama kuna integration?
Tunapigana.
Walituambia tumewapea stop. Musiingie huko kwetu.
Anasema by working together within regional blocks, countries can pool resources, build resilience and strengthen their collective bargaining power. We are strengthening our diplomatic ties na watu wa Asia, lakini sisi wenyewe huku nyumbani,
hata majirani wanafaa wakubali sisi tuwafunze a few things like masuala ya siasa na masuala ya kupiga kelele.
Hiyo vurugu wamesema tuache hapa, tusipeleke kwa
wengine. Vurugu wamechoka kwenu, msikuje kwetu.
Inside TZ, successful WHO campaign for Janabi.
Kwani wata celebrate miaka ngapi?
Lazima
the whole week. Huyu jamaa alipata kazi last week. Wacheni afanye kazi. Kila siku Janabi.
Unajua WHO ni nini? WHO is big.
Sasa kama baba angepata AU atunge jamaa za huko. Lazima tu move on.
Tumekuwa tunasema the AU chairperson every now and then.
Alipata hivi.
Samia welcomes Dr. Netumbo. President Samia Suluhu Hassan welcomes her Namibian counterpart, that is the president of Namibia. Anaitwa Netumbo kule. And TANAPA dismisses Ruaha poaching incident claims. On the top strip, defense budget up nearly 10% as recruitment policy triggers debate. And that's The Citizen.
All right. Those are the regional papers. We'll be back to take a look at the local ones in depth. For now, tuangazie hali ya anga. Na tunaanzia hapa kwenye zoom.earth. Tuone kama kuna mawingu yanayotanda humu nchini na kwingineko kwenye bara la Afrika. So wacha tujaribu tuone kwa umbali vile the continent is looking in terms of cloud cover. And you can see dots of cloud cover in areas around Ivory Coast on the western side of the country, of the continent, and probably on the northern part. Generally, there's very little cloud cover over Africa, yeah, in comparison to areas like India. Angalia hiyo vile wanakaa China, huko ni cloud, kunanyesha deadly. When you come back to Africa, very little cloud cover. The Americas also have a bit of clouds. So let's expand this and take a look at the East African region. Nothing much in the areas of northern Eastern Africa, Ethiopia, South Sudan, not much. But East Africa, hapa chini ukiingia Uganda, a bit of cloud cover in Uganda, and especially over the Lake Victoria region. Kenya, not much cloud cover. Kiangalia, sio mimi nimesema, hii ni sayansi. So tukuje nyumbani tuangalie. Tuanzie Narok. 14 degrees Celsius, partly cloudy. Chances of rain later in the day, highs of 23 degrees. In as far as the rainfall is concerned, 2.5 millimeters of rain in Narok. So kama unaenda Masai Mara, utanyesha tu kidogo lakini bado utaona simba.
Kitale, it's 15 degrees as we speak, feels like it. Rain likely to come at around 1 p.m. Highs of 26 degrees today in Kitale, and precipitation here is 13.2 millimeters.
Huko kuna mvua.
This one is heavy.
And they need that rain. Najua sasa Natembeya amekasirika na watu kule walikuwa wamechacharuka. Walikuwa sio wamecharuka. Mvua kidogo yenye wanyeshewa punguze kidagi. Garissa, 24 degrees, clear skies today, highs of 36 degrees. 0 millimeters of rainfall there. But a very hot day in Garissa. In Mombasa,
Kule Coast 26 degrees, feels like 29, partly cloudy through the day, highs of 29, and precipitation here is 2.3 millimeters. Showers of blessing. Hii hata ni tone tu ya maji.
Kidogo. Tumeangalia Mombasa
Yes.
Nairobi. 16 degrees Celsius, mostly cloudy throughout the day. Highs of 25 degrees, and that's at around 2 p.m. Huku ingine 24, tunachezea hapo 23 kidogo hapa na pale. Precipitation 1.0 millimeters. So leo hakuna mvua. Jana usiku kulinyesha na tulikuwa tuna mvua. Hata
asubuhi.
Kumenyesha.
Very heavily jana.
Sawa. All right. That's the weather situation. Tuangazie hali ya traffic hapa. Exactly 12 minutes past 6. Major tributaries into town looking clear. Ngoja uone ikipotea basi alafu irudi. Basi nikwambia tu. Teknolojia. Na tunarudi mpaka Ruiru pale China Square nini, Thika Road inakuja nywe past Garden City nywe, ikifika tu pale Muthaiga Pangani interchange ndio inaleta shida kama kawaida, lakini mapema sana. I don't understand why. Squeeze hii area around Pangani ina build up very fast in the morning, but it means watu wamejitokeza wanaenda kazini. That's a good thing. Jogoo Road kidogo tu pale Makadara, just something small. After that it's green all the way into town. Ukiingia town pale ndio unapata Haile Selassie around Marikiti kidogo tu both sides of the road, railway bus station, sababu watu wameanza kuingia town saa hii. Eastern side of the city, Kangundo Road is looking green on both sides of the road. Kwani leo ni ile siku ya working from home. Outer Ring Road, Fedha, Tasia, matatu ziko pale, watu wanangojewa waende kazi. Amkeni, muende kazini. Mombasa Road looking good all the way past Imara Daima, Next Gen Mall, Capital Center into the CBD. Southern Bypass looking good. Langata Road, nothing to worry about. Mbagathi Way, Ngong Road, na kule kwingine wanaitwaje? Wale watu wanatoka upandelea Western. Waiyaki Way, into town it's looking good. So shida tu ni hapa. Pangani interchange. That's not a problem.
Kama kawaida.
And yesterday what was happening?
Jana, but today is better because yesterday it had gone as far back as KCA University at this time of day.
All right, let's take a look at the quote of the day.
Without questioning our choices, beliefs, and actions, life loses meaning. True fulfillment arises from self-reflection, conscious growth, and understanding our purpose in this world.
All right, let's come back and take a look at the local dailies. Natembeya akaziwa, ndio habari kuu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Gavana achiliwa kwa dhamana ya shilingi milioni nusu, lakini azuiliwa kuingia afisini kwa siku 60. Kusafiri nje ya nchi hawezi. Gavana wa Trans Nzoia George Natembeya jana aliachiliwa kwa dhamana ya shilingi 500,000 pesa taslimu baada ya kukanusha mashtaka yanayohusiana na ufisadi, lakini chini ya masharti makali. Lakini swali ni kama walikuwa na evidence enough, mbona mnamwambia asiingie ofisini? Atafanya kazi namna gani? Kama hafai kuwa gavana, si basi asikue gavana. Hii mimi naweza enda kotini, hiyo koti nyingine niseme hapana. Hii siku 60, lakini anyway, koti imeamua. Vidokezo zaidi kwenye ukurasa wa mbele. Israeli yaua wa Palestina Gaza licha ya pingamizi. Watetezi wa haki walaani Tanzania. Wanaharakati wamekosoa hatua ya Tanzania kwa furusha kuzuilia wa Kenya. Na Mguni ponye kwa mbunge mkutanoni. Huyu ni mbunge wa Madera Eric Wamombi. Jana alilazimika kutoroka umati mjini Karatina. Karatina ndio wa Munyoro.
Mbona wanaguza mlima?
Ndio mbunge wa Munyoro. Mbunge wa Munyoro alitoroka mbio jana, kurasa wa 3. Pale juu, shimo la deni la Ruto lazidi akikopa trilioni 1.4. Hii ukipeleka Tanzania ama Uganda, hii ni budget yao. Hii ni kama deni tu yetu ina serve Ugandan budget.
Lakini nani atalipa hiyo kitu?
Ni wewe tu utalipa. Rais William Ruto ukilipa deni yako ile nyingine uko naye. Ile ya Mama Shi, ile ya Mkwashe. Unajua uko na deni hapa. Rais William Ruto alikuwa amekopa trilioni 1.4 kufikia Desemba 31 mwaka jana. akionekana kwenda kinyume na ahadi yake ya kukomesha mtindo wa kutegemea mikopo kuendesha mipango ya serikali. Habari zaidi kwenye ukurasa wa 3. Ujue tu ukilipa deni lako la mama mboga kuna trilioni 1.4 zinakungoja pia.
Wanatumia kiti na fridge kulipa.
Tumie na TV kulipa. Mnyonge mnyongeni finali leo. Mnyonge wanajulikana ni wanyonge hawa. Mnyonge mnyongeni finali leo. Macho yote leo usiku yataelekezwa ugani San Mames, Uhispania, wakati ile timu ya wanyonge. Unajua simi nimewaita wanyonge. Ni gazeti la taifa la nasema ni mnyonge, mnyongeni. Tottenham Hotspur, according to Arsenal, hao ni wanyonge. Na wale wanyonge wengine wa kule Manchester. Manchester United. Wanyonge wanakutana kule Hispania, San Mames. Wanyonge wanyongeni. Gazeti la taifa leo.
People Daily. Experts warn budget to lock out 1 million learners. Tukiangalia tu ndani wanasema civil society organizations in the education sector yesterday raised a red flag over budget gaps that of course threatened to lock out over 1 million learners from schools, even as Parliament closed the window for public participation yesterday. And by last evening, they say, the groups were hoping Parliament would adopt a raft of proposals, most advocating for greater education funding, a conducive learning environment, improved learner welfare, and prudent use of allocated resources. Now, in the budget policy statement for the 2025 and 2026 financial year, education has been allocated an estimated 656.6 billion shillings. But organizations united under the Elimu Bora Working Group lamented that much of this money is not used for its intended purpose.
Well, maswala ya elimu, this one will bring a problem. Yes. I can tell you for sure. Capitation funds are not going there as fast as they should. Now there are serious budget cuts in that sector. At a time when the very first cohort of CBC learners are yet to transition to high school.
Yeah.
What exactly will happen?
Rot that is tutor promotions at TSC still matters education. That story is on page 5. Other stories here. Ndindi raises alarm of a state plan to invest pension funds. Tangu watu Ndindi nyoro pale budget.
Anachoma.
Guinness World Record approves Kenyan girl to hug tree for 72 hours. But then you know hugging trees inasaidia kwa mental health. Na kutouch grass.
Unajua nimeona hiyo nikakumbuka kuna mtu aliniambia go hug a cactus. Ngeniambia go hug a tree. Hug a tree for 72 hours?
Yes. Hata mimi nitakwambia hug a tree. Na unajua leo tunaongelea mental health. Yes.
Go hug a tree
na walk barefoot and grass.
We wish her all the best as she seeks to break this Guinness World Record for hugging a tree for continuous 72 hours.
Oh wow.
Hata ukisikia usingizi unaishika tu.
Another lapo.
Well, interesting.
People Daily.
People Daily. Ruto's seal grab, another 3-word headline on the front page of the Standard. So wanasema a quietly passed law transferring the public seal, which is a symbol of government authority, from the Attorney General's office to the President's Chief of Staff may have troubling implications. Legal experts now fear that giving the President unchecked control over such a powerful instrument could enable deals bypassing the Attorney General and other key institutions, undermining the national principle of power sharing among branches of government. And you know, the public seal is a very important thing. It is one of those things that are handed over to the President. Akipewa ile sword, anapewa hadi seal anapewa. So the public seal is a symbol, like a stamp, used to authenticate official documents. To represent a government, it is a way to show that a document is real and legitimate, usually affixed to important papers like decrees and contracts. In Kenya, the public seal is one of the national symbols, along with the national flag, anthem, and coat of arms. Now, you know, these are some of the things that need to be taught in school. Kitambo tulikuwa nafanya civic education. GHC, geography, history, and civics. Na unaulizwa who's the minister for education, who's the Speaker of the National Assembly, who's the Speaker of the East Africa Legislative Assembly. Siku hizi watu wafanyi. Now, these are the things you need to be taught in a civics class, because even coat of arms, many Kenyans do not understand what it is.
Sasa inafunzwa pale history class, ama it's not there at all.
Civics, I don't know if civics.
Civics is not
only
there.
Fanya GHC?
No, civics is not there.
I did GHC.
Now it's in history.
There was a lot of patriotism back then. Unajua loyalty pledge.
Of course.
I pledge my loyalty to the president and the nation of Kenya.
Ninajua lakini nimesahau.
Endeleza hapo.
Si.
My readiness and duty to defend the flag of our republic.
Unajua mimi nilikuwa scout.
My devotion to the words of our national anthem.
Who is old now?
So I think this is a very good opportunity for Kenyans to understand what this seal is about and other national symbols. The flag, the coat of arms, and the public seal. Away from that, and this is a story that I think people really need to focus on. 2027 general election at stake. IEBC warns. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission has told the Apex Court, this is the Supreme Court, that failing to carry out, listen, constitutional exercise of redrawing electoral boundaries before the next elections will render the ballot invalid. Niliimba hii kitu nililia the whole of last year when we were crossing mpaka director ananiambia hapana, hiyo story ni mzee. Ndio hii kimekuja kuwaramba.
Reality check.
Kimekuja kuwaramba. Ndio hii sasa. Ile story ya lollipop bado iko hapa ndani page 3. Lawyer wins sacking case over lollipop nicknames. Huyu lawyer aliita jamaa fulani, and it's a lady. A city lawyer has successfully challenged her termination from employment over sexual harassment claims, which were based on her alleged reference to a former colleague as baby boy, lollipop, and a baby boy lollipop. Aliita jamaa kazini baby boy lollipop, akafutwa kazi. Ameenda kotini,
ameshinda kesi. Sasa anarudi kazi tena.
Sasa sijui watafanya nini. Sasa sijui kama atakubali aendelee kuwaita baby boy lollipop.
Alipata compensation. It was 1 million?
Kama alipata kakitu. And that's the standard today.
All right. Business Daily Nation. Nurses no one wants. Now, crisis, workers tossed between counties and Afya House. They put their lives on the line to help patients in isolation wards likened to death chambers during COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. 5 years later, the medics are enduring months without pay, the life of penury plunging some into depression and suicide. Why have authorities been so mean to them? Hawa watu tulisema wana protest every month, 5 years. Hawajapatiwa ile permanent and pensionable, they're not getting salaries and their working conditions, of course, are very, very wanting. Na wako hapa, tunaona Miriam Washera, Muranga, David Singili, Jacqueline Deritu, wako hapa wote, UHC workers wale wa COVID-19 pandemic, those who put their life in danger. Other stories here, outrageous public schools run on empty and institutions forced to scale down operations after government failed to wire capitation money. Day high schools most affected by cash crunch as they fully rely on government funding. And 70% is the percentage of learners who attend day secondary schools that are struggling the most. New City Hall rules to limit number of matatus per route, and Governor Johnson Sakaja's administration proposes sweeping matatu reforms amid uproar from operators. On the top strip, corruption case, Natembeya freed but barred from county office. And 25,000 promoted teachers to wait longer for parks as a standoff persists. Page 6. On the back page, it is all systems go for Kipkeino Classic Meet. 6th edition will be held at Ulinzi Sports Complex that needs upgrading. And Mike Doughty, Rocket Safari Rally winner who returned to manage the iconic car race. That is an obituary for Mike Doughty. And that's the Daily Nation.
The Daily Nation to the Star, IEBC vetting order could trigger crisis. Now this is a double. These are different crises from the one we've talked about. Failure to conduct delimitation of boundaries could actually invalidate, and there's an opinion from a lawyer before the Supreme Court because it's required to give an advisory opinion on that. The fact that we failed, we defined the constitution as far as the deadline is concerned, na tukajaribu kujifanya ni kama tujui hiyo story, wacha ipite, hiyo imeenda hivyo. Supreme Court lazima itaongea, pale kuna crisis. Ya pili ni hii, court ilisema vetting bunge ya IEBC hakuna. Could trigger another crisis. Further delay will plunge poll cycle into turmoil. And I'm actually seeing, jana kuna wanu wa panelists alisema, ni kama tunapanga kuchange election date. Sababu vile kunaenda sioni IEBC ikikuja, na hata ikikuja sijui kama itakuwa na enough time. Kuna hii crisis na kuna hiyo ingine. Nilisema
2030.
Bias rocks TSC as teachers get promoted twice. That's a story on page 8 of this paper. Hapa chini President William Ruto jana alikuwa naimba wimbo wakifungua nyumba kule Bukuru. Ruto hands over 1,080 units to new homeowners in Nairobi. Lakini muona argument mingi sana kule social media. Walipopost president akiimba ametutendea fanya, watu wanaambia hii kitu ni Uhuru alianzisha.
Hajatenda.
Wewe acha mambo yako wewe. It's the front page of the Star. Pale juu Kalonzo shifts gears, turning Wiper into a new front for 2027 polls. And Natembeya blocked from accessing office in 6 million shilling graft case. 6 million, surely? 6 million? Fresh, independent, different. That's a Star. You can grab yourself a copy. 60 bob. Unasoma mambo mengi sana hapa.
Business Daily. Equity sacks workers over suspect accounts and M-Pesa. Nasema Equity Bank has fired scores of workers after an internal investigation revealed suspicious transactions through the employees' bank and M-Pesa accounts. The sacking began last week following investigations that kicked off on April 14 as the bank seeks to curb cases of conflict of interest among its staff. Ikitu inaongeleonga sana pale social media. Sitaki kusema Equity wanafanyanga ni social media, Twitter wanasemanga. And so the investigation focused on employees who received cash from customers or other entities linked to the bank, including workmates, into their salary accounts at Equity Bank or their registered M-Pesa numbers. Kenya Power cleared to buy 1.2 billion shillings transformers in Tendaro. On the ticker, M-Pesa payment from contractors cited in Natembeya graft case. An M-Pesa payment from a contractor wired from a dummy bank account is behind the graft charges leveled against Trans Nzoia Governor George Natembeya. Court filings reveal only 6 million shillings. Treasury to amend budget for a third time on revenue shortfall, and Stanbic seizes 1 billion shillings assets from defaulters. And that's the Business Daily.
All right. However, Treasury is set to present the third supplementary estimates. Even before we discuss the next one.
Yes.
When I present supplementary budget from last year's budget, days to go before the end of the financial year. Inaitwa Kenya. Just a reminder that these are the gentlemen who will be here for State of the Nation, the discussion about the headlines. Joe Nyoto, Senator Murang'a, Eddie Okech, Senator Migori, and Nabina Bwera, MP Lugari constituency. Do stand by for that conversation starting at 6:30. Tuangazie karakacha sasa. Nalikuwa uniambia za leo ni kama uzielewe. Tuanze na the cartoon on the Standard. And this one has two people, the Senate on one side and the National Assembly on the other, who look like they are in a very heated argument. Pale chini Mama Mboga amekaa pale na maneno ya constitution amendments. You know, no single attempt to amend this constitution has been successful. What tunazungumza ni kama tumechange mambo mengi. Hakuna kitu tumegeuza kwa hiyo katiba hata, because it's not so easy. So National Assembly na Senate wako hapo wanangangana, tutafanya hapa chini. Constitutional amendments zimekwama.
It's locked.
Yes. That's a Standard.
Daily Nation. Ruto critics wanapigana hapa between the police and EACC, tug of war.
Unaona ameshika nini? Miguu ya huyu jamaa. Ruto critics. Ruto upande moja na police, upande mwingine na EACC. Lakini anatembea Ruto critics wanakuliwa na polisi na EACC pande zote.
Kila watu anamngangania.
Sasa hii ni mambo ya kuraruliwa na hizi bulldogs. Lakini unajua ni bulldog kwa nini? Toothless bulldog. Kwanza hii hainanga meno. Toothless bulldog. Afadhali hao.
Okay.
That's the People Daily.
The Star bado wako hapa, hao ambao wanafinywa, wanapigwa nyundo. Peter Salase, Bees. Peter Salase, George Natembeya, and of course the latest pia Rigiji pale. Lakini imeangukia sana Natembeya.
Unajua unaona po anasema responding to. Remember that famous statement by PLO Lumumba. It's akin to responding to a mosquito bite with a hammer. Ndio hawa ni mosquito bite, lakini una respond na hammer ya kutini. Ni kama government critics. This is the same theme as the one on the People Daily. You're responding to a mosquito bite with a hammer. Same thing, and you can actually tell. 3 cartoons, same theme. Because this one also talks about political suspect, na amefunguliwa mashtaka mengi sana na polisi, wamefungua file na ile inaitwaje hii cabinet ya files na charges. Lakini huyu polisi mwenye anafanya hivyo is being manipulated as a marionette. You can see strings being pulled by someone else who's not seen. Yes. So the theme is the same. Discussions around what is happening to government critics. That's the main discussion on the cartoons. Later on,
it's still Mental Health Awareness Month, bado May, and we'll be talking to men, like in gender balance. Ni mimi na Redemptor will be in studio, ladies pekee, psychologists. Talk about why men don't speak up. Why don't you speak up? Of course.
Mimi wanazungumza sana.
Unasema nini?
Ama ni kazi, ama ni sababu nimelipwa kuzungumza.
Yes, so we'll be having this panel of gentlemen. Of course, watuambie kwa nini hawaongei. Why don't they want to be vulnerable? Anasema vulnerability, unakuwa vulnerable, leo it will be used against you. Unaambiwa no wonder baba yako alienda, no wonder kichwa inakaa box, no wonder unafanya nini na nini.
Go hug a cactus.
Go hug a cactus. There you are told. All right, meanwhile, interact with us on our socials, TV47 Kenya on Facebook and on YouTube, and X at TV47 News KE. My handle is @Ann_Dida and the hashtag is Morning Cafe.
My handle is @FredIndemuli. See you after the break.
Our world is changing every day, and so should we, for the better. Each week, we tackle the big why, the question that should be on everyone's minds. Why isn't this fixed yet? Deforestation, global warming, and the adverse effects of climate change. The future isn't just something that we inherit, it's something that we create. Join us on The Green Fix as we tell the stories of those who refuse to give up. When it comes to fixing the planet, there is no time to waste. Join me, Shiksha Aurora, on Thursdays at 9 p.m. on The Green Fix as we look into the big why, you and I.
For comprehensive information and education on your health, Body Garage is here.
Don't allow anyone to pluck out your good tooth as long as it is strong and stable.
Cancer doesn't start today and you get the symptoms tomorrow. By the time you pick it or the time it is manifesting in you, probably will be there about 5 to 10 years.
The eye is the window to the rest of the body.
Don't forget to stay hydrated.
And of course, you at home do take your water.
So the ultimate test is actually you check your urine. Your urine should be clear.
Clear like the water.
Yes. Should be able to see the other side of the urine. If your urine is colored or has changed color, you cannot see the other side, then you have not taken enough water.
Don't forget regular health checkups. Early detection saves lives.
I want the message be, we can prevent cervical cancer. We prevent cervical cancer in several ways. You have young girls and even somebody who's above that age, you can pay at least every 3 years. Somebody should have a pap smear done.
If you are 40, 45, 50, going upwards, once a year, please go see a doctor. Yeah, it's just for normal routine maintenance.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided
to cross the bridge, buy his house, and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Jiunge nasi tunapoangazia safari za viongozi bora. Kutoka kwa ushindi mkubwa hadi masomo magumu.
Wakati wetu kwamba wasichana si wa kusoma, ni wa kuolewa, ng'ombe ipatikane, wazazi wakuwe watajiri.
Tunashughulikia yote.
I wish I were a better investor.
My parents taught me how to look for things for myself.
Tazama Mfahamu Kiongozi, ambapo kila kipindi kimejaa maarifa, mikakati na hadithi za kukuza azma yako.
For me to succeed, I have to fight.
Kila Alhamisi saa 1:30.
Our world is changing every day, and so should we, for the better. Each week, we tackle the big why, the question that should be on everyone's minds. Why isn't this fixed yet? Deforestation.
All right, welcome back and good morning once again. This is a Morning Cafe on TV 47. My name is Freddy Ndimuli. Time for us to take a look at the big headlines this morning. And a quick look at the dailies. NASA's No One Wants, that's a big story on the front page of the Daily Nation. Ruto seal grab on the front page of the Standard. IEBC vetting order could trigger crisis. That's the front page of the Star. And we'll be back to take a look at that IEBC crisis. But I want us to focus on Taifa Leo. Naangazia taarifa ya gavana wa Trans Nzoia George Natembeya. Anasema Natembeya akaziwa. Yesterday, George Natembeya appeared in court where he was released on a cash bail of 500,000 shillings. Plus, he's been barred from office for the next 60 days. This is the first time this is happening. Allow me to welcome my panelists this morning on my immediate right, Natembeya Vs MP Lugari constituency. Karibu sana. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
A long time, eh?
Yeah, it's good to have you back in studio after a long time.
Yeah. You know, sometimes you have to take a break.
Karibu sana.
Yeah.
Senator Editorial makes a comeback to Morning Cafe. Karibu sana. Senator Migori County.
Asante sana, my brother.
Yes. And a very familiar face on this panel, Senator Joe Nyoto of Murang'a. Karibu sana, Senator.
Thank you.
Let's start from there. And as far as devolution is concerned, the fact that a governor has been barred from accessing office for 60 days, this is unprecedented. And fine, the fight against corruption is something that is ongoing. But what kind of effect does this have, Bwana Nabi?
Yeah, first of all, I want to declare my interest. You know I'm a product of devolution. For 10 years, I'm a founder member of devolved units for 10 years. I worked with the county government of Kakamega. Now, there are three things that we must put into perspective. The first one is the political context in which this is happening. And then the second one is the functional context of the office of a governor. And the third one, which is very critical, is the public context. Now, the public context here would be that what do they view this to be? Is it persecution? Is it an issue, a political issue? Is it a social issue? Is it affecting service delivery? By and large, what I've seen and the feel I get from Trans Nzoia may even dismiss what this is all about, because to them, they look at it as a political persecution, and that kills the whole thing from where it starts. Up to late in the night, I have family in Kiminini. Up to late in the night, there were 4 places that Natembeya arrived in Trans Nzoia and had to go to all those places. And there were thousands of people. Vikeke, Kitale Town, Matisi, Kiminini, and Saboti. And those are the hotbeds of politics of Trans Nzoia. Now, in the context of service delivery in the office of the governor, the decision of the court yesterday completely affects service delivery. Of course, this is not the first one. In 2013, 2017, there was such a ruling to a governor, but still he functioned. It affected, and then the second one to be affected was the governor of Migori, then who was also barred from his office, even traveling. Of course, it became very difficult. There are issues here. One of them is what is the gazetted place for holding his county executive, what we call county cabinet meeting. If there is a particular designated place, then he's dismantled because he can't then function, okay? But if he left it loose, like my governor then, Oparanya, had left it loose, we could hold a cabinet meeting anywhere, so long as it's within the county. But critically important, remember the office of the governor, the resident office of the governor, is the seat of power. So when you are barred from accessing your seat of power, then there's an issue. Okay. Then I go back to my first point, which is the political context in all this. Prior to this, there are 3 things that had happened in the environment of Governor Natembeya. The first one is that he had come out as what I would call, in quotes, an alternative political view in my region. Okay? Secondly, he's been opposed to the Kenya Kwanza government in terms of what he thinks they are overbearing, and the promises they are making are not getting implemented. Thirdly, he has been opposed to the Luhya leadership, especially of Honorable the Prime Cabinet Secretary and the Speaker of the Assembly, and that lot, and Governor Paranya. Now, what then that means is that what does the region interpret it to be? The charges here, as I read them and listened to the court, is about corruption. But unfortunately, politics has taken the center stage.
Okay, and before we go to the politics, because I want to understand the legal implications of a governor having to stay away from office for a very long period. Senator Eddie Oketch, you're tasked with defending devolution. If you look at the 3 cartoons on the Daily Nation, the Star, and I think the People Daily, they're all talking about the fact that government critics are now under siege. George Natembeya, and thank you, Bwana Nabina Bwera, for painting that background, is one of them. He's opposed to the leasing of sugar factories. He's opposed to so many things that this government is doing. There is an element and an understanding, a general view that the fight against corruption is being generally weaponized against critics of this government. Now, when it comes to affecting a county operations directly, do you think that probably even the fight against corruption is crossing the line?
First of all, I must say that there are two lenses in which you can look at the issue of George Natembeya. One is the popular opinion, which is that critics of government are being targeted for those dissenting voices are somehow targeted to be silenced. And it happens that there are governors who have also joined the national political discourse. Natembeya is one of them, but it's not the only one. We've seen a place like Siaya, the county government of Siaya, the governor of Siaya, has been a very serious critique. I think more even of a critique of the national government than any other governor. And even more importantly, he has been even a critique of the broad-based arrangement more than any other governor. And we haven't seen that kind of scathing attacks on him. I wouldn't rank, but I would say that it's in the popular domain that in terms of voices of governors who are very strong against the Kenya Kwanza administration as well as the broad-based arrangement, you would definitely put Orengo anywhere in the top category. And Governor Orengo probably hasn't seen that kind of scathing attacks. So for you to judge this, you must put it in that context, that who are these claimed voices that are being targeted. And there's that possibility. It is not something that is far-fetched, in the sense that we have seen in this country a number of times that people who are sometimes against government can be targeted, and that one you cannot write off. So that could be one narrative. But the hardest narrative for me is the fact that he's also seen as somebody who was reigned on by the EACC administration, or if you may, officers who went to pick him on issues of corruption. So up until it is variably confirmed so, then as a senator I can't talk, because we've also seen in this country in the past where a number of executive offices have been abused by individuals who then, because they are very popular, sometimes they can be able to mobilize populations around them, end up mobilizing those populations to the extent that the population themselves will say, you call him a thief, but he's our thief. He's sharing with us, right? You remember the popular times of Senator Mike Mbuvi Sonko, when the Senate actually itself vindicated a case of corruption and actually impeached him, but even then it didn't sit well with the populace that he was very, very popular with. So there's a very thin balance here that I would say that because it's a matter in court, I would rather wait for the court to pronounce itself on it, and then you can be able to find a grounding reason to protect or to condemn. Because where corruption cases are, as a senator, who oversights executive, whether in national government or in county government, that we must call out very strongly. But we do not want a country where dissenting voices are silenced by whichever way of state instrument.
Okay. Senator Nyoto, of course, we've seen a trend, and a few weeks back, even the senator for Kiambu was arrested in similar fashion. And it came at a time when we've seen... Governor of Kiambu, sorry. Governor of Kiambu, Kimani Wamatangi, was arrested in similar fashion. And around the same time, there was a lot of talk about how he probably had disagreed with the head of state on a few issues around the trip to Mount Kenya region for the president. It is very difficult not to buy into the idea that this is weaponization of the fight against corruption and the EACC simply being used for that. Do you agree?
Yes, totally, Fred. And one thing that, you judge something by is when there is a particular pattern. I mean, you cannot tell me that only governors who cross the government's line are corrupt. We are yet to see any governor, for example, from the president's region, being subjected to what we have seen Wamatangi and Natembeya subjected to. And one thing that I have an issue with Fred, and which shows clearly that this is political witch hunt, is because the dramatic arrest. I mean, these are county governors. If, an order is placed to them to present themselves before EACC, I believe these governors will present themselves to the EACC. So the question then becomes, why do we stage these dramatic arrests of governors? People who have, huge responsibilities, people whose address is known, and people who can be given summons by the DCI, by EACC, and they will present themselves. I was looking at those images yesterday of Governor Natembeya being handcuffed. I mean, this drama, Fred, and I think this government should get embarrassed of itself. How do you handcuff, a governor because there are corruption charges against him? I mean, you handcuff dangerous criminals. So this thing of handcuffing governors, dramatic arrests, going home, we can understand where the detectives go visit governors' homes or anybody's houses to collect evidence, but not to arrest. You just issue a summon against a sitting governor and they'll appear before EACC. They'll appear before DCI. I mean, these are not fugitives. So the other thing is what I'm calling the pattern. I mean, and my colleague Eddie had said, and I was listening to his argument, that if it was going to be political harassment because of the way that these governors criticize the government, that Governor Orengo would have been arrested. I want to tell Eddie here, he may not have thought about this, but for Governor Natembeya, the issue is about kingpinship in the Mulembe nation. President Ruto does not want the Mulembe nation to have a kingpin because, of course, he knows the consequences that will have or the impact it will have on the 2027 elections. He would rather have Wetangula and Musalia remain there because he can and has already been able to manage these two. And anybody who has been observing the political landscape in this country can tell you that Natembeya is coming out as a Luhya kingpin and a kingpin who is independent-minded and who may not be compromised. And that is where the war is. Now, just to tell Eddie why Orengo and Nyong'o may not be arrested or, subjected to this, because in Luo land, there is already an established kingpin. So Ruto does not feel threatened by Orengo and Nyong'o. But Ruto feels very threatened by Governor Natembeya. Right. And that is why Governor Natembeya has to suffer this. Okay. That he suffers. Let me just, from Orengo and the Nyong'o.
Does the events of the last 2 days, therefore, then lionize Governor Natembeya further in the eyes of the Mulembe nation?
Let me just tell you. 2 days ago, I put up a post, and I said, I am shocked on how naive, and I'm very clear with my words, how naive this government is becoming. You cannot make a blunder after another. And I said, people may say all manner of things about Moi, but he had two impossible characteristics. The ear to listen. The man was an impossible ground listener. Impossible. And that's why he was able to be around for 24 years. Then I said, secondly, he had a way of internalizing intelligence, information as is. He would take it as is. Then say, oh, please, can I? Then how do we get out of this? And I said, where we are today, you require a situation room where the head of state and the tools of security can retreat and think through. And I even told them, my years after university, I had an opportunity to work in OP as an intern. And Moi would do a very impossible thing. Have an opportunity to call a chief, a local chief, Abraham Macho in Lumakan, in Mautuma Lugari, speaks to the chief before he goes to meet the cabinet or goes to meet the head of internal security, or before he speaks to Boynet, and give it to Boynet, the best professional NIS Kenya has ever had, Boynet. So he says, Chief, kulikuwa na mafuriko. So chief explains the mafuriko. Then he says, kuna mambo ingine, watu wanasema nini? The chief tells him as is. So as he reads the report and he has his Oyugi reporting, Moi has an alternative view. He knows that here I'm being cheated. Here I'm not being told the truth. For God's sake, you did not need. If anyone thinks that you can curtail Natembeya by that show off, you have made Natembeya Luhyas like. And I'm speaking as a Luhya. I'm now speaking as a Luhya. Luhyas like rebellious people. Look at the history. Luhyas don't go with conformists. That is their nature. Look at Masinde Muliro. Are we together? Look at Wamali wa Kijana. Are we together? I mean, look at Shukuku. Are we together? Now, by that drama of, Natembeya is, by the way, one thing I've known in this country, a person who has worked as a DO, a DC, remains one. Let me tell you, even that Kashagwa you see. So he knows certain things about government. Actually, if you had just summoned Natembeya, he would appear. He understands that government has certain muscle. So, but by you dramatizing it, that is, you have handed over. Actually, for me who come from the Western region, who even had my own issues about the way Natembeya looks at politics, they have handed over the public to him like this.
Yes.
I speak as a Luhya.
All right. And if you look at the front page of Taifa Leo, if my director can help me with that, the image used there of George Natembeya. Sema Natembeya Kaziwa, but if you look at the picture, it definitely looks like a lionized individual there, the front page of Taifa Leo. That's a discussion today. What has government done? Government Natembeya, has it lionized him further? Let's take a break, we come back and discuss a lot more. You're watching Morning Cafe.
Our world is changing every day, and so should we, for the better. Each week, we tackle the big why, the question that should be on everyone's minds. Why isn't this fixed yet? Deforestation, global warming, and the adverse effects of climate change. The future isn't just something that we inherit, it's something that we create. Join us on The Green Fix as we tell the stories of those who refuse to give up. When it comes to fixing the planet, there is no time to waste. Join me, Shiksha Arora, on Thursdays at 9 p.m. on The Green Fix as we look into the big why, you and I.
For comprehensive information and education on your health, Body Garage is here.
Don't allow anyone to pluck out your good tooth, as long as it is strong and stable.
Cancer doesn't start today and you get the symptoms tomorrow. By the time you pick it or the time it is manifesting in you, probably will be there about 5 to 10 years.
The eye is the window to the rest of the body.
Don't forget to stay hydrated.
And of course, you at home do take your water.
So the ultimate test is actually you check your urine. Your urine should be clear.
Clear like the water?
Yes. Should be able to see the other side of the urine. If your urine is colored or has changed color, you cannot see the other side, then you have not taken enough water.
Don't forget, regular health checkups. Early detection saves lives.
I want the message be, we can prevent cervical cancer. We prevent cervical cancer in several ways. You have young girls and even somebody who's above that age, you can pay at least every 3 years. Somebody should have a pap smear done.
If you are 40, 45, 50, going upwards, once a year, please go see a doctor. Yeah, it's just for normal routine maintenance.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Welcome back. You're watching Morning Cafe. We continue discussing the big headlines, and one of the biggest is the one on the front page of the Taifa Leo, Natembeya akaziwa. And it's the image of George Natembeya on the front page that I'm looking at. And as Natembeya Vs said, this action by the government definitely may have a different kind of consequence than what, if at all, it was trying to silence dissenters. This has a different kind of consequence, don't you think?
My brother, I see there's a narrative, you know. I've listened, you know, I like listening, especially to where elders like my brother here is, as well as my colleague senator. You know, when they talk, you can see actually there's a narrative. And I think that the narrative is that Natembeya was being targeted by state and therefore has been created as an alternative kingpin of the Luhya nation. I think that I'll let that narrative sink in those who want to go with it, because I don't think that I also understand Luhya politics a little bit, in the sense that I have worked with the Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga for a while, who actually has had a very strong presence and actually control in the Western politics in general. Of course, is a nationalistic leader. I also studied in the Luhya land, just for your information, and I think that this would be a desirable outcome. You know, people who might think that Natembeya would then go and displace, you know, the National Assembly Speaker, you know, and people like Honorable Mudavadi, and other Luhya leaders. I think I want to wish them well in that narrative.
You don't think it will happen?
I think you know, in politics everything is possible, and I'm not being dismissive. I'm just saying that it's not anything near Luhya Kingpin. That's all I want to say. But I also want to say that the important message here is this: when these kind of things happen, because I've seen a number of governors being rained on in the past. Right, and the default that people easily take is usually a political default. And as a custodian of devolution, because at Article 96, I'm placed to protect those governors as well as protect the interests of the county. And the interest of the county is sometimes protecting those county governments, but also sometimes protecting the people. So we find ourselves in a very thin balance here, where you might have actually a problem, like I do, with how our governors use our resources. It's a serious problem across the country, some worse than others in terms of just, wasting public resources and stealing public money. And therefore, there's a very thin balance on this matter on, do you want to completely blind yourself against that there's a potential, especially where the EACC has raised some serious concerns? Do you want to blind yourself against that and just take it politically? I don't think that would be by responsibility as a senator. It would be responsible. That's why I'm saying that this is a matter that's in court, because you had Senator Newton saying that this was purely political. Senator Newton on 9th of February this year, the same raid, in fact, even worse than what happened in Natembeya, happened in Bomet, where the governor of Bomet was rained on by the police. In fact, public was rioting. The public was tear gassed in Bomet. And it was a serious arrest that we all saw in the glare of cameras, right? And then the court had to pronounce itself on the 19th of February, about 10 days after, when that matter was put in court. I did not hear a custodian of devolution sent from Muranga to the Senate, making even a sentence about that particular issue. And that's why I'm saying it will be wrong to throw aspersions that this is a purely political issue. So what happens if after 10 days the court finds Natembeya liable for some criminality around the wastage of public resources? What do you say? Will you chew your words? So as a senator, you must be responsible that, yes, there could be a potential for dissenting voices being silenced, and that we must condemn. If the national government is dissenting voices of people who disagree with them in this kind of manner, that's unacceptable within our country. But in the same manner, as a senator, we must also take fiduciary responsibility that if there is a place where there is corruption, we must condemn that as well, because we should not let ourselves be caught into the politics. We must be responsible leaders who can look at things from facts. Okay. And those facts will come from court.
Let's consider
just a minute. Just a minute. I want to help my brother on 2 points. The first one is to disabuse what you are saying, that there is a narrative. I think I just gave you a background and said the manner in which this thing happened will even kill the intended purpose of reining in on corruption. Because the moment you make it to just a politics, the way this one has come out, then the public buys what sells to them, which is political narrative. That's what I was saying. You would have done it better. That's all what I'm saying. The second point I want to help please don't reduce this debate to being you and your problems in the Senate and all that with the new. I don't want to go that direction. I want us to look at this thing very objectively. It is not only in county government. I sit in a park. It is not only in county governments we have problems of corruption. And all of us, as a country, have agreed, including Mama Mboga, that we cannot continue losing money.
But it seems you're very comfortable with it because...
But how many of these...
It seems you're very... Fred, just one moment.
Listen.
It seems it's very comfortable with the issue of corruption because if there is substance raised on...
You have a problem of understanding. Let me put...
I'm more concerned...
No, you have a problem of
understanding. Gentlemen. I'm more concerned... Gentlemen,
I think this...
Allow me to lead this debate.
I'm telling you, you could want to move this cap here.
Fred. Probably we consider the effectiveness of these actions by the EACC
exactly.
over time. Because
what do you do?
It's not just under William Ruto that we are seeing this.
Exactly.
Even Rigathi Gachagua was arrested
under
Uhuru Kenyatta in similar fashion. But how consequential are these actions by the EACC?
Even as you put across your question to me, I think it's important that we tell our colleagues, even where you have a very burning point, just wait for your time to come And Nabi should have actually waited because it was my time. With those very burning points, just wait until your time comes so that we may be able to progress well. Just hold it. And I agree with most of them.
I'm the one to assign you time. I may decide when you speak.
Most of the arguments that Nabi has are actually, I support them. But it's important so that we can have, a flow that everyone waits until they get their time. I think I have heard Eddie say that as a responsible senator, because the Senate, of course, is charged with the responsibility of, protecting the devolution. And of course, by protecting devolution, you protect even the resources allocated to county governments. But I think Eddie, and that's why Nabi couldn't have been able to wait, I think Eddie is trivializing this debate. We did not, I have not in my submission, alleged or said that we support pilferage of public resources. What we are saying, and that is what Nabi couldn't be able to wait because it was very burning, it is the way it is being done. That's the issue we have. The way it is being done. And I think I had submitted earlier, just summon a governor, they'll appear, and then you carry out investigations, charge them in court. Eddie has also talked about the governor of Bomet and said that there is no particular pattern, but Eddie knows that the governor of Bomet, in fact, Bomet and Kericho, those two counties, the governors there are not Ruto's men. And that is something that is known by anybody who cares to know what is happening in our counties. And so when you
kindly clarify, what do you mean?
What do you mean?
Ruto's men?
Yes. What I mean is, when you are somebody's man, of course, you are somebody who enjoys their favor, you are somebody who enjoys their support, and of course, there is a particular, there are those men, we have kitchen cabinets, and that is known. There are those men that you call the president's men. And that is not something that...
The governor of Bomet and the governor of Kericho.
Yes, those two. And I do not want to get into more details. But of course, the Kipsigis, subset of the Kalenjin, have very many problems with President Ruto. And that is something that we can have a long debate about, of course, even because of their economic activities, which is tea and what have you. And there are so many other things. And nobody doesn't know what Farouk has said about the Kipsigis in the past. And so there are those things, and it is known. And there is also, in Kalenjin politics, there are also two sides. They are pro-Ruto, leaders, and others who are not exactly, pro-Ruto, and let me not mention names. And so the governor of Bomet fits in the pattern. That is what I'm trying to say. Because this is not a Ruto man, and I insist on that. But if you allow me, to just...
I'd asked you a question about the EACC and how effective these dramatic arrests are. How consequential. You've seen so many dramatic arrests by the EACC that really end up not in court, or even in court, that case just fizzles out.
Yes, that's it. What EACC should do is to carry out sufficient, investigation and present a watertight case against any governor that is not to be pilfering, public funds in their counties. But what we are seeing ECC doing is, populist, actions like these dramatic arrests. I don't know whether they are the ones that, I think the police here then also, had cuff a governor, and we make a big deal out of it. If you talk about Wamatangi, the governor of Kiambu, the arrest was so dramatic. When it went to court, there was almost nothing. So I think it's important that we call out EACC. Let them do professional investigations. Let them not hurry in arresting, suspects. Let them, have a good case in court, well researched on, with good evidence after, thorough research and thorough investigation, so that we can see, because, and I agree with Eddie, as a senator, we want to see people who are, plundering public resources, especially at the county level. And then we also need, especially when it's the governor, we also need to place those officers working at the county, they also need to have individual responsibility. Because I could be a governor, yes, and I think this is something that can be, that has been debated on even in courts of law, where maybe, say, a county executive committee member, for example, engages in corruption, and instead of them being taken, being made to face the consequences of their actions, then it becomes the governor's, it is blamed on the governor. I think it is important to place accusations and to place the responsibility on the individual officers, and let's come to the governor where there is a direct, link to him, between him and the corrupt deals or deal that there could be in a county. Because you cannot keep, the governor, of course, then holds the political responsibility, but the legal responsibility, in my view, should also rest with the particular officer or group of officers who have been able to, who have, engaged in corruption. And this drama should end. Okay. Let's see people being summoned, taken to court, evidence presented, and let our judges do what they are trained and employed to do.
All right. And of course, the big headline there, Natembeya akaziwa, is a big discussion. You look at least 3 of the cartoons on most of the big papers today, and the theme is the same, that there seems to be a trend that those government dissenters are being targeted. You want to add something, Senator?
Yeah, they both silenced me, and I think that...
I want us to wrap up on this issue,
yes,
so that you can discuss
I just wanted to say
I'll come to you, Bonana.
Yeah, he took mic from me, and you also got a bite on this, but I wanted to say this, Fred. There are 2 things here. The manner in which Natembeya was arrested and what reason he was arrested for. I think this is a critical way of putting it.
Correct.
And my problem is that the political class is giving more weight on the manner of arrest and not the purpose of arrest. The purpose of arrest, as claimed, this is not me, by EACC, is a matter of corruption of lost public funds. I was just encouraging my brothers that you cannot lose sight on that and giving weight to how he was arrested more than why he was arrested, because why he was arrested, as alleged, is on the loss of public funds. And I think that you've got a responsibility more to protect public funds than to protect an individual, so that you leave this matter to court, that if it's established that he was indeed found guilty of pilfering or embezzling public funds, then he must be held accountable. That's my work as a senator. And I'm saying that you need to be consistent on the issue of arrest, and not only by EACC, my friend. It's also by other security agencies that we have seen. My brother Joe Nyutu is very strategic. He changes depending on where politics finds him. But I don't change according to what politics finds me, because the issues of arbitrary arrest in this country, right, is things that I've fought for as much as possible. Right now, you see him talking about governor being handcuffed. His own minority leader in the Senate, a senator, was arrested when he was protesting in a manner that was demeaning, was bad. That is Honorable Mazaya of Kilifi. He was a member of the House, but because he was in a political convenience at that time, that he could not be able to talk about arbitrary arrest, he never mentioned a word. In fact, he celebrated in the floor of the House, together with other senators who at that time were aligned with the UDA. Opiyo Wandayi was arrested, the current Waziri for Energy. He did not talk about it like that, arbitrarily. And there are a number of leaders who have been arrested in a way that is demeaning, and Nyutu has never talked about them because for him it's convenient. And that's why I'm telling you that let pressure, I heard Maina Kageni today in the morning saying, let pressure not take you away from your purpose. And your purpose is to protect devolution, such that as you fight for these human rights, make sure that you also fight for the people, that their money is not stolen.
Listening to Nyutu and my brother Eddie, I get a bit worried. And my worry is this, that up to where we are, Eddie is pretending not to understand what public pressure can do in a good case. If you lose sight of that, Eddie, then you are not protecting that devolution. Because if we do things that then the public dismisses as politics. The intended purpose is lost. Because you need the public to run with the government or with the EACC on this matter. So when you are doing a case, you must understand what is the essence of it in terms of intended purpose. And I will want to share with you something. A former governor of Busia, Jamu, was handled it the same way. Last week, they threw away the case. Threw away. Because the drama took away the case. Now, instead of EACC concentrating on tightening evidence, they rushed to do politics, image building at the extent of actual case. And that's why I'm saddened myself. We know the things that are going wrong. But when you are going for it, make sure you look at all sides and say, I want to carry the public with me on this matter. Because you are talking about public resources. Now, you have talked to hear yourself about Songo. People saying, Mwizi wetu. You know, why did they say Mwizi wetu? Look at that. Then you lose it. That is why in this country, I know people who have murder cases, people who have cases of theft, but the people go ahead and vote for them. Because we have not handled it in the manner to carry the public to understand that this is a serious matter. It's a matter of that sits in their bedroom. It is eating their school fees. It is eating their roads. It is eating the electricity they should be having. Right. That is my problem.
All right. Thank you, Bwana Natembeya Bwera. And I think we hold that discussion. We stop it there because there's something else that we need to talk about. And these are jitters around the next general election and the date as well, whether or not it will be free and fair. It is part of the conversation even here at TV47. Let's have that story about jitters around the 2027 election so that we come back and discuss even the concerns around the 2027 election from the IEBC's perspective. All right, on the front page of the Standard, there's a story there about 2027 general election at stake, IEBC warning. On the front page of the Star, IEBC vetting order could trigger crisis. Now, we've ignored the issue of IEBC for a while, and it seems that we've decided that things can be swept under the rug, including the issue around the delimitation of boundaries. We defied a constitutional provision on the delimitation of boundaries last year in March when the deadline passed. Kenyans appear to have moved on and decided we can defy that and everything will be okay. But lawyers have gone to the Supreme Court. The matter is before the Supreme Court seeking an advisory opinion. And according to one of the lawyers, it would appear that an election in 2027 without the delimitation of boundaries could be declared null and void. Senator Newton, let's start from there.
Thank you. And although we have departed from the previous matter, Fred, Eddie mentioned my name and said that I change with convenience. It's important that I also have right of reply. And he has said that we are concentrating on the way the arrest was done instead of concentrating on the substance of the matter, which is pilferage of public funds. But it's important for Eddie to also be a keen listener. I said that EACC should have done more in investigation than in this drama. That's what I had said. Because it's not the way he's arrested that will prove him guilty. It is the evidence that will be adduced before the court. And that's something we had. Then he says that I change with the political convenience. I want Eddie, probably later, to tell you or to tell viewers any time that I supported violation of human rights. I have never done that. I have never, and I want him to go to the Hansard and bring you, excerpts of any time that I supported, either in the Senate or in, in the media of violation of public rights, because I can never do that. But now coming to the issue of IEBC, it is true, and I agree with the concern by IEBC that, that if we go to the elections without, doing the delimitation and the review boundaries, then people could go to court. I mean, we may open ourselves to litigation, because of course that is not what the Constitution provides otherwise, because this is the 10th year since the boundaries were revealed, Fred. And so it's a constitutional provision which people may base the litigation on after the elections. And I think if I were to be asked, I would say that we need to seek a constitutional interpretation from the Supreme Court, that now that the deadline for review of boundaries is almost catching up with us, what can be done so that the court then, that apex court can then, give guidance so that we do things as per the Constitution. Because why this, I think the drafters of the Constitution made this particular provision in the Constitution is because, populations grow bigger in some areas than others, and so issues of underrepresentation could occur. I mean, there are also historical issues, and the people feel that they need to keep reviewing boundaries and what have you. And so I think it's important that the IEBC, like I've submitted, seeks an interpretation from the Supreme Court. Yes. Because they also need, and there is also the issue of, time and resources, because they also need to start preparing for the 2027 general elections, which could be very highly contested, and that is why there is a lot of pressure around the elections of 2027, and even a lot of politics happening around the politics of 2027. Fred, if you allow me, you have had people condemn the second deputy president, Rigathi Gachagua, for saying that if, IEBC in 2027 forces President Ruto on Kenyans, then there could be issues. Everybody I have had, trying to respond to that and condemning Rigathi Gachagua has deliberately ignored the first part of that statement. If IEBC messes with the election and forces President Ruto on Kenyans, because Kenyans are tired. I mean, I've not heard Murkomen say or give any guarantee that that the elections will not be messed up with. He is only going to the second part. Everybody is going to the second part and not the first part. So it's very important that IEBC, makes a deliberate decision, and we see them making an effort to see to it that the 2027 general elections are free and fair, because nobody wants our country to be plunged into unnecessary chaos. Okay. And while still at that, I think it's also important that the issues that have been raised about, the proposed commissioners, that they be done away with, and Parliament, the National Assembly, before they approve these names, should deal with those matters in a convincing way, so that then the confidence of Kenyans also on the chairman and the commissioners of IEBC will also be boosted. Because we do not want these issues. We do not want, tension to start building. So let Kenyans know, let everybody know that everybody has a right to express their concerns and fears of what could happen if 2027 general elections are messed up with.
All right, the story on the front page of the Star talks about the delay in reconstituting the IEBC. Because of that court order, Parliament will not even be able to vet the nominees next week. And we do not know the result of that. Will we need to go back to the drawing board and restart the reconstitution or the recruitment process? That could cause delays. Of course, there's the issue of time. That there are time constraints. Any new commission would have to deal with voter registration, the by-elections that are there, and now the possibility that they could be forced to delimit or to conduct a delimitation of boundaries. Due to the concerns, budgetary or otherwise, there seems to be this notion that there's a larger plot to delegitimize the election date of 2027, that probably delay the date, or because of these irregularities, force the elections to be invalidated. Do you agree that there could be such a conspiracy?
Number one, forget about delegitimizing the election date, because the election date for the first time in the Kenyan psyche, it's printed in the constitution. So a constitutional...
There's even an argument about whether it is 2027 or 2026.
Yeah,
There's a lot of debate around it.
Yeah, so the debate notwithstanding, the fundamental document that we all must depend on is the Constitution of Kenya. Whatever the Constitution of Kenya described as the election date, and the Supreme Court is the biggest house that can be able to interpret this, and for us, that becomes the date. So that one is a smaller...
But let me challenge you on that, because Article 89 on delimitation of electoral units, it's also very
I'm coming to that.
It's also very expressive on the date and when delimitation should occur.
Yes.
We defied that without consequence.
Yes.
Could we not defy the election date as well?
I'm coming to that because one of the biggest challenges that we have, Fred, is the functionality. And I'm talking about functionality of our courts. Because our courts make some pronouncements within, if a matter is brought to you that has got implication on constitutional timelines, because it's only the courts that can be able to help us sometimes implement some of these things within time. And then you, delay those pronouncements, then it has got serious implication. And I feel like the court sometimes then have a leeway of just making a judgment that would then ignore the substantive timelines that were given. A good case in example was when, just a bit after the election, when the court were faced with the question of who is the majority and who is the minority in parliament. This is something that must be declared so that parliament can function immediately. The ruling comes 2.5 years later, Fred. So our courts must start being the custodian of the constitution in terms of interpretation. But that said, we have seen there are a number of other factors that affect the drawing of boundaries. One of them is the census issues. You'll ask yourself, will we be able to use which census? I think you can only use a practical census, census of 2019, which, if you look at that, the way it impacts the delineation is counter, in the sense that somebody would argue that probably based on that census, maybe the populations haven't shifted as much. But that's a problem. But the issue of timeline also comes in place, which the timeline issue here, we saw the legal aid team, and perhaps the senior people here can tell us. The legal aid team actually, despite the obstacles and impediments of time, they actually did work on delineation in a record less than 2 years, and they worked it out. I think this is where we find ourselves now. Number one, we must encourage the courts to pronounce themselves very fast on this IEBC issue, so that people know, should we go and do the process of reconstituting the panel should go the process of reconstituting the IEBC, or is it a green light so that this individual can take office immediately? And if they were to take office immediately, then as a young person, and I always tell this to Senator Joe Nyutu, is that the matter of time can be captured by the matter of technology. Because the relation of boundaries that used to be done in 10 years ago, 20 years ago, there has been more advancement in technology right now. If you look at the tech around GPS, the global positioning systems that can be able to help you map both population and even look at drawing of boundaries. If you look at data, it is now more advanced. We're in a more advanced technological inclining that if this particular commission was to take office immediately, then I would encourage them to go fast and be able to embrace technology, embrace modernity in terms of just dealing with some of these issues. But the pertinent one that is not just a matter of technology is the issue of population and census. And I think that is the critical one that we must all look at.
What about the politics of population? Because I do understand that some of this could be politically engineered. There are people who are not so very comfortable with the delimitation of boundaries at this point.
Yes, and that's why I say that is the one that technology cannot answer. The politics of it must be critically looked at, because if you don't look at it critically from the political standpoint, then you will have a lot of back and forth, people fighting back and forth. But I think that there's also a critical thing that you have mentioned, that we have got by-elections. We have got, I think, 7 MPs by-elections, and I think there's 1 Senate by-election, and about 9 wards by-elections that need to happen. It is critical that this becomes the litmus test of this commission, because it has got a lot in terms of what John Yutu talked about, public confidence. And that public confidence and trust will be built on how they exercise those by-elections as well, because those by-elections have got implication in terms of voter registration, whether you will open it up for young people to be able to register and vote in those particular constituencies. Those by-elections have got idea around transparency and verification of results. And more importantly, there is technological know-how that must be used there, which again affects the idea of technology in boundary delineation. So this is something that must happen first, but it's upon the courts to help the country settle as
We
fast
still don't have the IEBC
Fred,
counting months to election.
Fred, unfortunately, I'm in that group of people who talk of common good.
Yes.
Very well. Fred, you know, people want to trivialize this issue of delimitation and an election coming 2020. Anything that one does that will affect the date, people not going to an election in August 2027, Kenyans will resist.
I agree.
So, if you were to ask Kenyans today, and I'm talking as a commoner, if I went to my constituency and asked them, what is important today? Is it limitation of the constituency or going to an election? They will say, we want an election even if you were to call it today. Period. If you look at this constitution we have, it says in the preamble, acknowledging the supremacy of the Almighty God of all creation. I'll jump on and come here. Recognizing the aspiration of all Kenyans for government based on the essential values of human rights, equality, freedom, democracy, social justice, and rule of law. And in 259, it says, this constitution shall be implemented in a manner that promotes its purposes, values, and principles. Then, Fred, it falls...
Does that invalidate Article 89?
I want to make my point. I haven't even made my point. There are 4 things you will need to look at. Does this country, as where the economy you have today, have more money to do the following? Do a census? Because you need a census. We can't go to do delimitation with that thing that was declared in court that some parts of this country, the figures were manipulated. We can't. Because we would be playing into the gallery of having a manipulated election. That's number 1. Number 2, do you have money in this economy, the way it is today, to go and do that limitation? Please, limitation, as much as my brother is talking about GPRAs and all that, it is about communities, people. You will need to go and convince why a certain small community has to move from where they are to belong to another constituency. You have to go and talk to a certain group of clan why they should be joined with this other. It is not as simple as people imagine. Number 3, which is critical for me, you already have bending issues on the IEBC timetable. You have constituencies unrepresented. You have wards unrepresented. Which one comes first? And already, this if you are to go by the constitutional timelines, it says you must achieve certain time before you go to an election when you do delimitation. Now, if you were to do a delimitation that ends within 6 months to an election, how do you operationalize it?
Allow me to read the article. Article 89 on delimitation of electoral units, Section 2. The IEBC shall review the names and boundaries of constituencies at intervals of not less than 8 years and not more than 12 years. 12 years lapsed.
Elapsed.
But any review shall be completed at least 12 months before a general election.
This is what I'm talking about now.
Meaning that by August next year, we should be done with it.
How can you achieve that?
But does the inability, probably due to lack of resources, invalidate a provision in our constitution, Senator? Because this is the same thing. If we defy and express a provision of our constitution, aren't we going therefore to open the box to defying even the election date and the provision
before Senator comes in, I hadn't even finished my point. So I said, if you are to read that Article 259 and you look at the preamble of this constitution, it provides for two things here. That our constitution is progressive. Our interpretation must be purposeful.
It is an express provision about dates, limits, deadlines. The same way that we provide that the election shall be on the second Tuesday, I think, of August after 5 years. If we defy this one, there should also be consequences and probably even the possibility of defying the election date.
Exactly, friend. And, that's the greatest fear. And you know, some of these, some of these things that are happening are not, some of us are not just seeing them happening, you know, organically. You know, that there are names that have been, you know, selected by the president, you know, picked by the president from, of course, the list that was provided to him by the IEBC selection panel. Probably somebody somewhere picked some names because they knew that those names would, of course, attract litigation, like we are seeing already, with, you know, an idea or with a plan to have the elections delayed. Because, of course, I've listened to my two colleagues, and I like what Nabi is saying, that, and I agree with it, that Kenyans would not want to hear that anybody is planning to extend the date of the election even by 1 day. But then you see, there could be some constitutional matters that may necessitate such a delay. Because, I mean, just let me express myself. I mean, if there are these delays, for example, if, for example, now this litigation takes time, and I like what Eddie has said, that our courts are letting us down sometimes because they need to deliver timely decisions. And I totally agree with him. The matter of, you know, determining who was the majority and the minority in the National Assembly and the Senate is a matter that was unnecessarily delayed. I mean, the judges ought to have banned the midnight oil. And so, if there is this litigation, and of course Nabi doesn't want to hear me say that, but there is litigation about these names that the president has selected, and this litigation, the judges do not play ball, and they delay this, so that again, by the time we are coming up with the, you know, IEBC commissioners, then we have been overtaken by the dates constitutionally. So what do? There will have to be an interim arrangement, and that interim arrangement, of course, would mean that the president continues occupying office. And these are you have to look at this with the backdrop of the fact that Senator Cheralgei, our colleague, had proposed an extension of this term to 7 years. Of course, we shut it down. It did not see the light of day. But then it tells you somebody somewhere could be having some idea. And so if you cannot do it through parliament, why don't we delay, you know, the formation of IEBC, so that whether we like it or not, then the status quo will remain for at least maybe another 2 years, because maybe somebody is very certain that they cannot make it back to State House. And so anything is possible, because politics is the art of the possible. So what we are saying is that we are very concerned about this, and the side that I belong to, Fred, I can tell you, we are saying, if it is possible, let the names that the president has presented before, the National Assembly, let the National Assembly, you know, approve those names, so that we pass, because we are confident we are winning this election at the side that I'm in. And so whether somebody brings even their relatives, I mean, we are okay. Because what we fear most is using these, going against these names, litigation and what have you, whose end result, in my opinion, would be a delayed election, a delayed delimitation of boundaries, a delayed, election, which would plunge this country into chaos. We would better have these commissioners with their chairman, even if they are biased. Of course, we would better be able to guard our votes, rather than delay this process.
Fred, there is something I must say here, and I must say it in the strongest term possible. There is no any chance, any imagination to postpone the date of the election. It is not possible. And especially, and I've said it, where the Constitution has said in black and white that this elections will be organized on this date in our country. You can't imagine that. The only problem is that these delays will give you a weaker IEBC in terms of preparedness. Okay? Because by the time you finish to get this IEBC constituted, then you will have a weaker IEBC because it just needs time to be able to build capacity of an institution, to be able to build capacity of the individuals to handle election, to be able to put up the machinery, the technology that needs to address not just the election, but all those responsibilities given to IEBC. So don't even dream that it is possible to postpone a date of election in this country. That you will be trading into very dangerous grounds for this country. That's not possible. But I must say this. The IEBC constitution, the delineation of boundaries, the management of elections are by large, under Article 1 of the Constitution, a political process.
Yeah.
Okay? The reason why the political process is because the sovereignty of this country is given to the people, and then it's interpreted that the sovereignty will then be exercised directly or indirectly through our elected representatives. Now, where does the problem come from? I have pointed one at the delays that we see in our courts that are not in that spirit of working with the tune and the need and the mood of the country and of the people. This is a problem. But the bigger problem lies in Parliament. The bigger problem lies in Parliament because the people have donated the power of discussing these issues, initiating these conversations, and dealing with them in a timely manner to the Parliament of Kenya. And it's unfortunate that the people of Kenya did not give the Senate as much legislative power as they gave the National Assembly. It's very unfortunate. This is a conversation we're going to have, and I think that this one, I hope...
Do you think the National Assembly has been intentionally reluctant to discuss
I'm going to that because I want to point it out. I feel like we have got GMO politicians in the National Assembly. Why do they call them GMO politicians? They're GMO politicians because during the time of people we admired, like during the time of Honorable Martha Karua, Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga in Parliament, Honorable Anyang' Nyong'o in Parliament, Honorable Gitobu Imanyara in Parliament, Honorable James Orengo in Parliament, and the likes. Just go back to those times, Shikuku, that my brother was referring to here. This would be a discourse. A discourse would mean that a parliament would sit and would alter any kind of house proceedings and focus on what is important to the country. Like the issue of IEBC is so important that you cannot understand why in the National Assembly this is not the only business that are transacting. Because it used to be during those times that you would see, and I miss those days when I look at them in the clips, you would see parliamentarians walking to court to go and listen to these proceedings and putting pressure in courts to do things that would be important to the people of Kenya and are of emergency to the people of Kenya. The way our courts are now behaving, and I'm not saying that they should overreach. It's not about overreaching. It's that this is a political process, that the interpretation of that political process lies in Parliament to the extent that MPs must put pressure on all institutions to be able to act in a timely manner, to be able to see the significance of these issues to the people, because otherwise, judges will just sit back and say, this is just another matter. Right. I'll deal with it in 2 years' time, I'll deal with it in 3 months' time, I'll deal with it in 1 year's time, when they've got serious constitutional obligation. So one thing that Kenya should do, as I finish, Fred, they must give the Senate of Kenya a full mandate on legislation, where the Senate of Kenya can initiate some bills, and it's not say that this is a county bill and this does not concern counties, because leaving this issue with only the National Assembly has proven to be way fatal for the country when they cannot run this thing as a discourse.
Well, Natembeya Vs, you're a member of the National Assembly. And listening to you, you also seem a bit reluctant
first of all,
to engage in this delimitation of boundaries.
That's not heckling. I don't deal with people who think by demeaning others they are making a point. That's childish, irregular, unacceptable. You know, first of all, he does not understand that he is a member of Parliament. Parliament constitutes of two houses. He keeps on referring to members of National Assembly as MPs. He does not even know himself. He's defined as a member of Parliament.
I said Senate, yes, my friend.
Well, we can run through your nini here. Please, we can run through.
I am well.
Then we can run through. Number two, I need to help Mok understand. He has a limitation in understanding. On this issue, as a member of Parliament, as a member of Senate, if he strongly feels so, he can bring it up. He can talk to anyone. He can go even to that court. He has said he used to see members of Kinashikuku go to court. What has stopped him from going to court? Nothing has stopped him. But let me tell you something. You know, he has not even read this constitution properly. Under Article 89, it has even a provision. You know, there's no crisis. People are trying to create a crisis where there is none. And I want to tell you, in Dumuli, I can be, and I'm telling you, put the day today. That is the exit route the court is going to use. I can tell you for free. This constitution is very progressive. 89 says, if a general election, if a general election, 8940, limitation of, if a general election is to be held within 12 months after the completion of the review by the commission, the new boundary shall not take effect for purposes of that election. So where is the crisis? All what this means, once IEBC is in place, they start the machinery. If it will be not within 12 months, before 12 months to the election, all they will do, they say we have delimited and we have met the requirement of the Constitution. However,
but you've just ignored Section 2.
But please, you must read it. That's why I'm saying, don't read one in isolation of the other. Because the Constitution anticipates there can be delay. That's why they are providing for it, that if there is a delay, that you are going into that, it's here. I'm not reading my own Constitution. Then, all that will happen, you will go to the election, but with the old boundaries. What's the problem with that? There's no crisis.
What happens to the fact
what
that
I agree with the Mok, there's no reason for postponing an election. This Constitution has a way out.
What happens to the fact that we have defied Section 2, that we have gone beyond the deadline provided by the same Constitution?
Very good. Do you know why in this Constitution, Article 259, which I referred to you, it says advances the rule of law. There is no way you are going to have done the delimitation when there was no IEBC. That's why in interpretation it says, when you are interpreting this Constitution, ensure that it is advancing the rule of law.
In the Muli,
it's only the last it is only in the last 2 years that we've not had an IEBC. Yeah, we had an IEBC that would have done the same job.
Look, in the Muli, I've been called childish, and I was very quiet about this, and I think that
I didn't call him childish. I said what he said is childish.
And I don't. I will not debate it. I will not debate it. But I want my brother to understand here that you can read for us this Constitution 10 times, if you want. The same way lawyers will read it, the same way business people will read it. We do not want academic exercise. What I said, and I said it very respectfully, is that all the interpretation of the Constitution and the power to actually give it life is a political process, which is why we have got Parliament, the National Assembly, and the Senate that are supposed to give the political life of this discourse, right? And make it a discourse to the people. What is wrong with that? And I've questioned the role of National Assembly, not because I'm running away from the role of the Senate, but because some of the substantive motions and legislation work have been squarely given to the National Assembly. This is a fact. This is not me saying. If you read, if you read Article 95, if you read Article 104, if you go all the way to 116, the legislative power that have been given to the National Assembly is way too much that I wish them the courage to make this a political discourse. And then I'm saying this as I finish, Fred, even as we speak right now, if you read Article 229 of the Constitution about the Original General Reports, that after every 3 months, after they receive this report, they must then debate, consider this report, and approve or disapprove of them. And that role, right, That role of the National Assembly has got serious impact on Article 203 on dividing national resources. Okay. The bill, what we call the Revenue Division Bill, has just come from Parliament yesterday. We received it in Senate and we are discussing it in Senate. Do you know, Fred, that the basis for which we are dividing money between the National Assembly and the counties is based on the last approved report by National Assembly, which is 2021 financial year, when the Auditor General has finished up last year. What is wrong by encouraging my brothers? And I'm not calling them out for lack of any reason. What is wrong by encouraging National Assembly to take a political discourse on issues that are of national importance?
Allow me to give you each one of you a minute only for your final remarks. Start with you, Senator Nyoto.
Thank you, Fred, and my two brothers have really patronized this debate and left me by the wayside where it's okay. Probably in their concluding remarks, they can tell us what would happen, because both of them hold the view that there is no way we are not going to have 2027 elections, I think on the 9th day of August or something like that. What happens if there will be no IEBC? Because looking at section 259 that Nabi is talking about, you know, the rule of law, which if I was going to interpret it, then would mean that all the issues, the litigations surrounding IEBC commissioners, of course, have to be dispensed with before, of course, we form the ABC. So what happens if these litigations are delayed, and by, you know, like say even July of 2027, we still do not have IEBC? What would happen? That is important for them to say, and I think it's important that we call out on the court. And I want to agree with my colleague, Senator Eddy, that the Constitution granted far too many powers to the National Assembly to the exclusion of the Senate. Okay. I mean, it's about all the money bills. It's the National Assembly that decides on this. They are the only people that vet, even these commissioners will be vetted by the National Assembly. The CS is everybody. The Senate has no role. And don't forget that a senator represents, like I represent, I represent 7 counties. So I have no voice at all about these matters, about who becomes CS, about, you know, even important matters like election. Okay. That is something that's a very genuine and valid concern that Eddie has. Finally, let me call upon the government to let people do their politics. Let Natembeya build himself as a kingpin of the Rift Valley. Let Rigathi Gachagua build himself as a kingpin of the mountain and beyond. Let the government stop shivering, because, Fred, I can tell you that President Ruto hangs only on Raila Amolo Odinga. If Raila Amolo Odinga departs him, President Ruto is minced meat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Bwana Natembeya Bwera, just a minute for your parting shot.
This is what I would want to say. Part of the problem of this country is the argument is giving. And I want to ask Kenyans, please get out of political kingpins. Yeah. They have not helped the country. That is why this country is being held hostage by people who call themselves kingpins. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Eddy.
Mine is very simple. The issue of IEBC is such an important matter that the political class, especially the National Assembly, must make a priority and make it a discourse in conversation so that we can be able to restore the confidence of the public that we will have an institution that will run a free and fair election. Number 2, I want to condemn in the strongest term possible any voices, especially political voices, that want to make the issue of 2027 election any issue that is tribal or regional or kingpinship, because those kind of conversation will only make the country volatile towards the next election. And we have seen this with Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, who recently in an interview said that if elections are not free and fair in 2027, then 2007 will be a Christmas. It will be like a Christmas. I think this is very reckless statements that we must not make. Let us have a country where we can agree to disagree, but most importantly, the political class can work for the people to ensure that we have got institutions that work for them, and more importantly, to make sure that the next election happen on time and happens in a manner that gives confidence to the people and is based on issues that affect the people and not personalities.
Thank you so much. Senator Eddy Oketch, Senator Migori.
Give me a half. I'm not saying
we don't want to reintroduce.
I'm not saying. You know they have referred in their remarks. In their remarks,
half a minute, you give me
nobody has said. Senator. I would have appreciated if they told us what happens if we do not have IEBC, because that is what I had requested them.
And I think that's
finally, I'm not promoting politics of kingpinship. I only said everybody has to consolidate home before they enter into
Kenya is being held hostage by kingpins.
Thank you, gentlemen. Senator Joe Nyoto of Moranga, Senator Migori. Allow me to acknowledge you. Allow me to acknowledge
with kingpins.
Senator Nyoto, allow me to acknowledge my panelists. Senator Eddie Okech of Migori and Nabina Bwera, MP Lugari constituency. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for a vibrant debate, and karibu sana tena to TV47. Of course, 2027 general election at stake. IEBC warns an IEBC vetting order could trigger crisis. Two different angles on the IEBC. That has been our discussion this morning. After the break, we switch gears and talk matters mental health. Why men do not speak up? Anodida will be leading that conversation. My name is Fred Indemuli. Good morning.